Want to talk about this team. I know you've been excited, so I'm going to let you take the baton here and bring us to our third team we're covering here in the Pacific Division.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the most interesting team in the league are the former champions, not last year, but the former champion Golden State Warriors. This is the team that had, in my opinion, the single most interesting offseason and has the most to kind of determine. There's so much at stake this season. Their legacy is at stake. They have to turn Kevin Durant into D'Angelo Russell and then figure out what to do with D'Angelo Russell. And then halfway through the season, they're going to have to figure out how to integrate Klay Thompson. Meanwhile, the whole legacy of this team seems to be hanging in the balance. We don't know what to expect from them. Their off season was all over the place. I don't think anyone expected what happened with them, and so it's really really hard to get a read on this team. I think we talked about the Lakers being polarizing. I think the Warriors are another team that are just really, really polarizing around the league. I think some people think this team is not going to make the playoffs, and other people think they should be considered a championship contender. So it's all over the map. Similar to the Lakers, their depth is just really non existent. Guys like Jacob Evans, Alfonso McKinney, Alec Burks, Jordan Poole, who's a rookie, those guys are going to get serious run. They just picked up Marquise Chris. I mean, it is wild to look at this Warriors roster, even compared to just a couple years ago. Half the roster has turned over, Jason.
Yeah, a lot's happened. We all know about the Kevin Durant signing trade because he ended up in Brooklyn with the Manettes, and we're going to cover the Atlantic Division next week. But it ended up being a sign and trade. They get back D'Angelo Russell in a deal. They also trade the Nets a protected first-round pick, which was just pure thievery on both Durant and Sean Marks' parts. But Andre Iguodala gets traded in a cap clearing move. They just really completely jumbled their roster. Sean Livingston retired, which I think was a smart move because he did not look good in this past postseason. Klay Thompson's expected to be out till February at the earliest while recovering from a torn ACL. So, Ben, this is the Steph Curry, Draymond Green with a dash of D'Angelo Russell show. And while healthy, the three of them, I think, could be as good as any big three in the NBA, especially when you've seen the NBA, as I've said on past shows, going more into dynamic duos. So if Russell can build off of his breakout all-star season with the Nets, I think Draymond Green, who usually doesn't really amplify his game until the postseason, if he can give his all-in effort for a full year, and then you just have Steph Curry without Durant and Klay Thompson eating up touches at least to start the year, he's going to go absolutely off. I mean, do you see a scenario where this big three comes together and just shocks the entire Western Conference?
I would say this. If you are playing fantasy basketball this year, make sure you're picking up Steph Curry. And if you have a little extra change in your pocket, bet the Steph Curry MVP odds because I'd say there's a pretty good chance that Steph Curry has his best season as a professional basketball player, which is uh, pretty pretty strong praise for a guy who won a unanimous MVP. So I think this is going to be a year where Curry is going to shoot more than he ever has. His career high was about 20 shots a game. He averaged 30 points. I think he'll absolutely blow that away this year. I think he could have a 50, 40, 90 year. I think he could average 8 assists. I mean, I think he's going to have an absolute monster year, Jason. And I think Draymond Green is going to be motivated. I'm very worried about the D'Angelo Russell fit. The more I've looked at it, the more I'm worried about how that's going to go. I think he's going to get a lot of open shots. I wonder how Kerr is going to use him. But, I mean, really the story of this team is just going to be what can they get from the other guys because they need more. I mean, as good as Draymond Green is, he's not Anthony Davis. And that means that the Warriors need to get some serious contributions. So if you're looking for a team where someone's going to have to step up, the Warriors are it. I mean, either Alec Burks, Alfonso McKinney, Jacob Evans, Glenn Robinson III, one of these guys is going to have to be a rotation player, someone that Steve Kerr can count on. If they can't do that, I mean, the Warriors are legitimately in trouble, Jason, if that doesn't happen, because they just don't have anyone. And you saw the Raptors playing a freaking box and one defense on Steph Curry like it was a high school game because they just didn't fear those guys. And other teams are going to do the same thing. They might not play a box and one, but they're going to ignore those guys if they don't hit shots.
Yeah. I think another couple guys that we didn't mention yet, though, are Kevon Looney, whose 3-year, $15 million a year contract was.
Deal.
Yeah, no kidding. And then you have Willie Cauley-Stein coming over from the Kings, who I think is going to take some of that center pressure off of Draymond Green, allow him to kind of play up a little bit in the high post and make plays as one of the better passing big men in the league. And then, Chris and Burks are two reclamation projects. So I think Looney, Cauley-Stein, and Robinson are kind of going to be three key cogs for this team. And if they struggle, the Warriors will be in trouble for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just think when you look at this team, Jason, they have DeMarcus Cousins, Kevin Durant, and Klay Thompson coming off this team. And I mean, those were really their second, third, and fourth best offensive players for their team a year ago. And if you look at this team, I think the one thing you have to be really concerned about is just where are they getting that offense? I mean, Steph Curry was unbelievable last year. I mean, he can ratchet it up. And this is, again, why I say bet the over everything Steph Curry related statistically, because, I mean, he's going to have to do everything for this team while Klay Thompson's out. And that might be almost the entire regular season, Jason. I mean, D'Angelo Russell can pick up some of that, but I think it's a lot to ask that he picks up everything that Klay Thompson did, let alone coming close to what Durant does. And then you say, well, who else did they add? And they really, honestly, Jason, I mean, Kevon Looney and Draymond Green, I think it would be surprising if they average much over 10 points. I mean, who do you think steps up for this team to score the basketball?
It has to be Russell. I know you question the fit there in Steve Kerr's offense, but this guy had a breakout year in Brooklyn, showed that he could take leadership of the team. The Nets would not have made the playoffs without him, especially when they were working Caris LeVert back from the injury. So Russell has shown he could be a more disciplined, coachable piece. And I think that he will make Steph Curry's life a lot easier, even though there are doubts. I think with Draymond Green protecting him from the media, I think with Steph Curry being willing to distribute the ball and let Russell get his shots, I mean, he could be a borderline all-star in the West if he puts up the same numbers he put up in Brooklyn. And I think with the amount of defensive attention that Steph's going to command, I think D'Angelo could be in line for a pretty huge year in Golden State. The only thing that worries me, as he finally got his big contract, is where his role in the offense goes when Klay comes back. But I think at least to start the year, you're going to see Russell get comfortable in the Bay Area very, very quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but keep an eye on those other wings, Alec Burks, Alfonso McKinney, Jacob Evans, and Glenn Robinson III, because I would say if there's one coach that loves to spread the ball around and give guys opportunities, Jason, we know it's Steve Kerr. He's a Pop disciple, and he is a guy who just loves to get other players involved. He loves reclamation projects. He loves turning guys who are thrown on the scrap heap into contributors. And I would bet one of those guys, if not more, end up turning into much better players than we think. And I think when you look at this team, we're getting into the ceiling. I think that this is a team where it's a weird ceiling, Jason, because on the one hand, I think this is a team that's probably not going to make the top half of the Western playoffs. I think their best case is the bottom half. But if they make it in, Jason, and they have a healthy Klay Thompson, I think that they're a championship contender.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. I think a lot of these ceilings and floors that we're going to give is all contingent on the health of Klay Thompson, because I'm going to say they're a Western Conference Finals team with a healthy Klay. Without a healthy Klay, maybe they win one round. And then their floor, because of how good the West is if Klay doesn't get back in time or he struggles to get back on the court and find his rhythm, Warriors could very well miss the playoffs. But they have something that is not coachable, and that is a championship pedigree. When you still have 3 to 4 guys that have been there through these playoff runs, with Steph, with Klay, even though he's not playing, with Draymond and with Looney, I mean, this team knows what it takes to win. They've been through battles. They've won championships, and they've suffered 2 very polarizing losses, first to Cleveland in 2016 and then to Toronto last year in a series they were favored to win before Durant went down. I mean, they're hungry. They have that pedigree. So while I think their ceiling and floor are both all over the place, I mean, this team cannot be counted out based on their championship pedigree alone.
Yeah, I mean, gun to your head, Jason. If Klay Thompson doesn't get injured and is healthy for the entire finals, did the Warriors beat the Raptors last year?
Yes, I
I
think they find a way to get it done.
I think so too, and that's why for me, I mean, when I look at this team, we talked about the floor, we talked about the ceiling. Their over under is 47 and a half, and I can't bet against them, Jason. I think they've been holding back. There's a lot of games that I think Curry and Green would have played had they really needed them. And I think that those guys are going to play a lot more games. I think they're going to do a lot more. And like I said, am I worried about the wing players? Yes. Are they unproven? Of course. But I also believe in Steve Kerr. I believe in the way he coaches. I believe in his ability to develop one or more of those guys into real contributors. And I think the Warriors have a shot to win 50 games this year. I'm just not going to bet against Steph Curry. I'm not going to bet against Steve Kerr until I see otherwise.
Yeah, I'm going to give them the over as well because of the championship pedigree that I was just talking about. I mean, this season can go on either end of the pendulum here for the Warriors. They're opening up a brand new arena, the Chase Center. It looks beautiful. I would love to get out there for a game. Maybe we could do baseline jumper from there. I mean, is that wishful thinking? I mean, Bob Myers, I know you're a big fan of the show. If you want to get us out there and have us, cover the team, we won't say anything about Durant, even though I'm a Nets fan. What do you say, buddy?
I love it. I hope we can expense this to somewhere because I have a feeling that those Chase Center tickets are going to be just a little pricey.
That's why I'm trying to get us that credential, kid.
Well, I will tell you that one team you can definitely get credentials for, Jason, and that is the Sacramento Kings. While they're coming up, they are still the little brother in California. Out of the
They're the
four,
littlest brother in California.
out of the four teams there, it's not particularly close. They've had a rocky offseason, I would say. Some ups and some downs. They made a lot of moves during the offseason. They paid some guys like Trevor Ariza, Dwayne Dedman, Corey Joseph. Not guys who necessarily move the needle too much. They still have their core. Luke Walton is dealing with some legal allegations. There's a lot of movement this year, Jason, but for me, it kind of feels like the same old Kings. I'm not sure they've moved much from where they were a year ago.
So it does feel like same old Kings, but with a caveat, because now they have a core. Okay, they have Marvin Bagley going into year 2. They have De'Aaron Fox going into year 3. They have Buddy Hield going into year 4. This is probably the first time since the Mike Bibby, Chris Webber era that they have an actual young core to build around. And while I don't agree with the amount of money they spent on the complementary pieces like the Dedmans and the Arizas and the Josephs and the money that was just flying off the shelves in the opening stages of free agency, a lot of these guys said, hey, we'll go be the 10 seed. Let's go make $15 million and go play in Sacramento. It's close to the Warriors' new arena. I mean, come on. I think they'll be competitive again, but because of how good the West is, and I sound like a broken record, I mean, they're probably another year away from snapping their postseason drought because some of these really good West teams are older. We talk about the Nuggets and the Blazers and the Jazz all being ahead of them in the pecking order. I mean, there's realistically no room in an 8-seed playoffs in the West for this Kings team. If the Kings play in the East, we'd be sitting here saying, yeah, they'll make the playoffs, no problem. But this team could finish above 500 in the West and still miss the playoffs because that's how good the West is. So if you're the Kings, I mean, you're in a tough spot right now, and you would have to expect huge years from these young cores, the young guys in their core that we're talking about in order to make this happen.
I think this is the same case I made when we talked about the Utah Jazz. The problem I had with some of their offseason moves is that they don't change the fundamental trajectory of this team in the sense that if the Kings are going to become playoff contenders and championship contenders, they need De'Aaron Fox or Buddy Hield to become superstars. None of the moves they made this offseason really changed that. None of those guys are going to change that trajectory. They still need one or both of those guys to have star turns. And to me, I just don't know if I see the point in spending all that money unless you're fundamentally changing that fact about your team. You're fundamentally changing where your team can go. I would say if you're an optimist for this team, the piece you're looking at is De'Aaron Fox. I mean, The kid was an absolute